Next, I want to invite my dear friend, Sarah Maston. She's the principal and founder of Maston and Nakahara and Associates. Sarah, please.
Hey, it's good to see you. Hey, everybody. It's been a minute since I've been on a stage like this. I'm used to seeing people in a list on a webinar, especially on this topic. I'm here today with my partner in environmental scale, Daisuke Nakahara. Many people have not met him before because for many months in the pandemic, I would be on a lot of talks, whereas he is my technical counterpart, and so I'd like for him to stand up so that you can say hello and then come talk to him afterwards. In this room, we're the founders of Project 15 from Microsoft. Before that, we are solution architects that work with big companies, with big partner ecosystems to build big scalable solutions. And some notable things that you might actually know about: when I was at IBM, I helped co-invent and co-develop Looker blocks with a project called Simple Data Pipe. I know some Google people here, that might ring a bell. RapidSOS is a company that got funded, and they put me in when they got funded by Microsoft to do some what can we do. You may not know who they are, but if you call 911 on a phone now, that is the integration you're using to get help. So you may not see my role very often. And what happened was, a friend of a friend knew Eric Dinnerstein, who was in here somewhere. I cannot see past the second row. And he had a problem with his solution. And he said, hey, can you help my friend? He has a problem with his solution. I said, okay. And we came in, we didn't know anything about your solutions at all. And we were able to answer some questions, spend an hour of our time. And what happened was, we found out that as much as we thought that it was under control, because we'd only read the news, that you guys were starting to use so much technology that you weren't scaling very well. And so what started as a what if grew into a partner ecosystem of mentors that came and would teach us use cases, and then we would learn and learn and learn and get to know more of your use cases, more of your challenges. And because there's so many of you in this room, we've never gotten to say thank you. So thank you for your time when you were teaching us. And our video went out with just one question to the technical community: would they join us to help people in this room and others with their solutions if we could find a way? And to this room, teach us your use cases, which clearly started to work. But from where we sat at Microsoft, the only thing we can really do is create tools to put in toolboxes to help you. And of course, we just learned about some from Google right before me. So we made this open platform. It was 80% of every solution that would need to be connected on the cloud that was our day job. It would save, we estimated, $150,000 to $300,000 worth of cost to people like yourselves. And just to talk about scale, it took Daisuke about 3 hours to write it. It took us longer to write a PowerPoint deck to talk about it. And there were many high points to this project, many. And I just want to highlight a few. We got to be in this magazine, which is incredible. We partnered with a group at the UNDP to scale the open platform. And we got to do many huge hackathons with other people on our side. And so I was thrilled when I found out Seed Studio would be here. I didn't know, because that was a Project 15 project where Eric reached out and said, I want to join Project 15. What can I do to help? And he created a fleet of devices which you can actually learn about. We did a lot of talks. You'll see some familiar faces. But what kept happening is you couldn't scale, and you continued to not scale. And so this became something to look at. And so what were the patterns? Proof of concept purgatory. This happens in the commercial space, just so you know, so you don't feel alone. You get some seed funding, you have an idea, and then boop, doesn't go any further. There was confusion about what is private sector investment. Free credits, how much of my time, his time, other people's time could go towards your projects. Where couldn't we come off that field of dreams that we live on? We cannot cross the line to code with you, but we can do it to open source, was usually the line. Successful solutions, something amazing that comes out of a university. What happens when you don't work within a framework that's prepared to scale that as a commercial solution in tech? That's kind of like the good catch-22. So I used to hunt for stories about solutions, and maybe the people who made this are in this room. This is my favorite, one of my favorites. I love this solution. However, the article that I found is an anti-poaching solution with an article about it that says poachers take note. And I'm sure they did. And that would sort of hurt my heart. So when you start to cluster these blockers, it comes down to business model misalignments. An NGO business model and an academic business model are very, very different than the partner business model of some of the hyperscalers. So think about it as, Google, Amazon. It's nice to talk about other hyperscalers, by the way. Microsoft, all these types of companies, they create typewriters, and you want to write a book. But typewriter companies don't really write books. They have partners that come in between and help you. So that was a bit of a mismatch. Problematic publishing models. Let's say you found a new trafficking network, and you've done all sorts of research on public data. You publish a report about it. The bad guys read your reports too, and the network shifts, and that seems very frustrating as a publishing model in that case. And impact, but what about IP? So I respectfully disagree with the statement yesterday that says that you shouldn't be able to, have your unicorn solution in conservation. I believe that if you invent something that creates value, that you should be compensated for that value, especially if you can find that commercial use case. Whales came up. If you've got some whales data, I'm pretty sure that there are lots of shipping companies that would pay you for data as a service to predict how not to hit whales, because I don't think anyone wakes up and wants to do that in their business. So the business model canvas, which is an eye chart on this screen, so you don't have to worry about that, but this is something we do in the commercial sector, and if you're in the scale workshop later today, we'll talk about some of these topics, but we don't even start coding until we've done an analysis of how are we going to make money, who's going to be our partners to do this project, and then, all the different channel sales and things we can do. So there is very little, if you build it, they will come in commercial technology these days. The technical partner ecosystem, there's no such thing as a one-stop shop anymore from where we sit. Things are built together and in partnership because there's specializations across the different fields. So, for instance, Daisuke is really deep when it comes to engineering, and I'm the solution architect. So as much as my projects really come in with partner solutions that you've seen in the world, he is more ubiquitous because he led the team that invented Windows Plug and Play and the USB drive. So every day, probably today, you've already used something that Daisuke helped invent. This app is an example of how this works. So that is my son, Emerson. He is being monitored. I picked this use case because many of you do monitoring solutions. This is by a company called Owlet. This solution let me sleep at night. It is a smart sock, a camera, a gateway, an app. It was actually made with AVNet. So if you look up this use case, you might relate to a lot of these problems that Owlet was having with having a proof of concept and getting it to scale. So I'll kind of give that one to you to look up and see if you can find similarities. And then the private funding. It seemed to me that the 3 Ps, was skill sets that you needed, not necessarily just funding. So if I were to, poll the audience, and don't say anything, if you wanted $1 million worth of funds from a private sector donor, or do you want $1 million worth of salary to have some people come and help you, keep in mind, open platform, 3 hours of his work. It might not cost as much as you think. There are incredible departments at big houses, of course, Microsoft, Google. These are making incredible tools. But again, typewriters to write your book. So the current landscape of access to private sector skills is Tech for Good hackathons, side of the desk volunteerism, and an economic mismatch. I used to hear a lot, oh, I'd love it, but we can't afford you, et cetera. But that doesn't scale. So now let's flip. How do we come up with a solution or start to aim for a solution to fix these problems that I have heard over and over and over again, especially here, but for the last few years? So consistent full-time access to skill sets, and once those people are in role, they need to have roles that continue to grow skills. That's how you compete against not losing to private sector, because there's so much, conferences and learning and et cetera, and you have to match that to really compete. It's not just paycheck. And a salary consistent with market value. I know a lot, I represent thousands of people that I know that would love to move in and have very impactful roles versus what they do as a day job. They look at Project 15, or they looked at it when it was active, as real hope to figure this out of how we can really, really come in and help and combine forces. But they can't take half pay cuts because they do have rent in cities. And so that's, how do we make a world where that's not really an issue anymore? So I changed my tune a couple of years ago, and I did a talk about the 5th Industrial Revolution with the Jeff. That really doesn't have a lot of optics, the 5th Industrial Revolution. I mean, the Olympics are going on. Does anyone want to be 5th? I don't know. It's not like it's steam power. And so you guys are all in the 5IR, but you might even not know that. So I wrote an article that may or may not have been, people knew that I was going to write it, on my spare time and my day off when I would go to these events. What if we built an industry of conservation that could sit right next, first-class citizen, next to the other industries that get all the investment, people like me who come in and help you build your solutions? And it's really important to understand there's never going to be a killer app for conservation. It's going to be a killer partner ecosystem where people start to figure out, I'm really good at this, and you're really good at that, and I have a device, and we can integrate together, and together we can probably get more funding, resources, and get scale. That is how the private sector does it. So I started to think about, this is not an exhaustive list, I started to think about the areas of gravity that go on, conservation tech. There's some overlap, but I sit in this space, nature crime, crimes against environment, solutions fighting that. Rewilding, people talk about that, have events. Green tech, I met an amazing energy company. If you're into that, I will teach you about them later if you'd like. Nature-based solutions and the carbon credits, they're getting a lot of funding activity, especially, and they do relate to stuff you're doing. And the recognized industries. All of these you affect with your solutions, and this is a big deal. Every single one of you is probably partnered with somebody who's down here, or you know that your solution affects something going on down here, especially government and law enforcement and public sector. But you're in a bucket. You live in tech for good in our world. I would hear, Pat, it's so wonderful that you volunteer with those projects. Volunteer. So, one more minute, I'm getting the hook. So when you connect this up and you bring all of your gravity together, you are the industry of conservation. And when people ask, well, what are you going to do after Project 15? I said, I'm going to go sit inside the industry of conservation, and I'm going to try to build it. I'm going to stand on stage, I'm going to advocate across the divide that I'm from, and continue to try to bring that awareness, because all of you together are an industry instead of a sector. And when you are an industry, salespeople at big houses, they pay attention because they like to make ROI. And we need to just reframe what you do into that language. Thank you.